Good day, welcome back to Reading and Writing. For today's lesson, we will be discussing properties of a well-written text. So for today's lesson, we'll be talking about organization, coherence and cohesion, language use, as well as language mechanics. Let's first look at organization. When we say organization, it simply refers to the arrangement of ideas in a particular text. Now, when you are organized or when your ideas are organized in a text, that means that you achieve this because the ideas that you included in that particular text are logically and accurately arranged. Now, let's take a look at those two terms, logically and accurately. When we say logically, it means that the arrangement that you just did has a particular purpose. It serves a particular purpose. Why did you arrange it in such a way? So, meaning there is a reason behind your arrangement. That's why we say it logically. And that particular reason enables your readers to better understand it because as they go through your text, the way that you arrange the ideas in your text, it makes sense for them. It makes sense for you as a writer, and it makes sense for them. Now, when we say accurately, we simply refer to having it follow a particular pattern, a text pattern that we just discussed in the previous lesson, or a particular text structure. So it's easy for your readers to understand what the text is all about just through the arrangement of your ideas. Now, that is what organization is all about. Okay. Now, ideas are well developed when there is a clear statement of, like what I have mentioned earlier, a purpose, your position, what exactly are the ideas standing up for? Facts, is the text presenting facts? Is it giving out examples? Are there specific details that will support all of these statements? Is there a definition or are there definitions? Are those definitions, are those terms, are those ideas explained? Are there any justification for whatever idea was indicated in your text? Or are there opposing viewpoints that are explicitly or implicitly stated? So all of these things, you have to recognize that when there is a clear statement of all of these things, that means that you are practicing organization. Now, how can we say that a particular text is well organized? There are certain aspects or elements that we can look into. Take, for example, you can look into the physical format, how the text physically appears. So that simply refers to what you can see. Once you are presented with a text, what can you see? Without even reading the text itself, what can you see right away? Okay, so it might include how your text is divided. For example, are the paragraphs in the correct order? Or take, for example, the paragraphs divided in such a way that it's easy to understand, or the ideas are organized in a way that it's easy to understand. It might even include the font that you are using, or the borders that you are using, the margins that you are using. So things like that may also affect the way people view the organization of your particular text. The second one is signal words. Signal words are simply words that help you transition from one idea to another. Or signal words could be words that serve as cue for you to understand the next idea. So it's the cue and ordering of events and concepts or ideas in your text. Next, you can also look at the structure. It could be the complete framework of the text. By structure, we can simply refer to the previous lesson, which we discussed, which is text patterns and text structure. Is it narrative in format? Is it descriptive? Is it cause and effect? And so on and so forth. So you can assess that by reading the entire text and see if it really did have this complete framework that supports the purpose of writing the text in the first place. All right, so let's go to coherence. When we say coherence, It simply refers to the relationship of ideas between sentences. So the first one, okay, the first one, organization, it's the arrangement of ideas. How is it physically arranged? Okay. Now, for coherence, we are simply referring to the relationship of ideas. You now arrange it. Now, how are these related? How are these ideas related in the first place? Okay. Particularly between or among sentences. Okay. Coherence may also refer to the overall sense of unity in the passage, including both the main point of sentences and the main point of each paragraph. So, when we say coherence, it's the overall sense of unity. Does all of the, or do all of the ideas that you have presented in your text, do they match each other? Do they serve the same purpose? So those are some of the few questions that you can look into. How are the ideas that you have presented related to one another? Just make sure that they all support one another. So, coherence should not also be mistaken for cohesion. Cohesion and coherence are two different things. If coherence refers to the relationship among ideas, then cohesion simply refers to the grammatical and lexical relationship between different elements of a text that works, okay, to hold it together, or the elements of a text that work to hold it together. Now, when we say grammatical and lexical relationship, these are the technicalities of presenting the text. Did you use the proper grammar? Did you use proper spelling? Did you use proper punctuation marks? And so on and so forth. Not only that, did the words that you use best represent the idea that you want to relate to your readers? So basically, that's what you look into when we are trying to find out if the text is cohesive in nature. Okay, let's take a look at the following example and try to figure out if this particular text is cohesive, coherent, or both. Looking at the individual sentences, you can say that all of these sentences are grammatically correct. Therefore, they are cohesive, or the text is cohesive. However, you can still see that the ideas of each sentence don't match with one another, or rather, they don't support one another to come up with one complete idea for the entire text. Now, how exactly do we arrange the details in the text that we are producing? Like what I have said, your organization or the structure that you're going to follow depends on the purpose that you have in mind. Okay, what's the reason for writing the text in the first place? So you have to ask that question first before even arranging the details that you will be presenting. Okay, is it gonna be for fun? Is it gonna be for leisure reading? Is it gonna be informative in nature? Is it gonna be describing something, and so on and so forth? So there are many ways, there are many orders that we can follow. Take, for example, the chronological order. When we say chronological order, again, it simply refers to the time element. How is, or how are the ideas, or how are the details arranged in time, in terms of time? So basically, they should be arranged in the order in which they happened when you are following the chronological order. Okay? The next one is spatial order. When we say spatial order, if chronological order refers to time, spatial order refers to geographical location, or the geography of the details. Take, for example, is it in the left, or is it on the left? Is it on the right? Is it up or down? Okay. So sometimes we present details in this manner because we want to give our readers a sense of being there in that particular element or particular place or particular setting. Okay, that's why we incorporate the special spatial order rather in writing our text. Okay, the next one is empathic order. When we say empathic order, you simply arrange your details to emphasize certain points, depending on, of course, again, the writer's purpose. So you are looking into the importance of particular details and you arrange them. Take for example from least to the most important, or the most important to the what you think is the least important detail. Okay, so there's emphasis. You're trying to emphasize certain points in your particular or in the particular text that you are going to be producing. Okay, read the following examples and try to figure out which particular order was used in each of these texts. Have you figured it out just yet? That's correct. It follows the chronological order. How about this next one? If you're going to look at the words and phrases that are in red, then these are prepositions that we use to describe certain areas, places, or spaces. Therefore, this one follows the spatial order. Let's take a look at the next one. These texts, on the other hand, follows the empathic order. Now, another element that we can utilize when producing well-written text are signal devices. Signal devices are simply words that give readers an idea of how the points in your paragraphs are progressing. So, signal devices are words that showcase how one idea goes or relates to another. Okay, and eventually that would lead to the conclusion or to the ending of your text. Okay, so signal devices could be in terms of transition words, repetitions of certain words, certain elements, or certain phrases. This could also be synonyms, the use of synonyms, as well as the use of pronouns. So let's take a look at all of these examples of signal devices. Let's go first to transition words. So when we say transition words, these could be words that refer to time, examples of which are presented in here, or words that refer to sequence. How is it gonna be arranged? Or okay, how does one idea go to the next one? Okay, or transition to the next one. Next, you can also use words that refer to space. Take for example, above, next to, below, behind, beside, etc. And there are also words that we can use for illustration. When we say illustration, you are simply giving examples, exemplifying the idea. You can also use words that actually compare, okay? And then, of course, when you compare, you're not only giving the similarities, you can also give out the differences. So, by contrast, in contrast, you can also use this particular transition words. There are also words that refer to causes and effects. So, take for example the words because, as a result, consequently, then, so, since, etc. These are some of the words that you can use to transition, okay? Next, and of course, there are words that we can use to conclude the text that we are writing, okay? Or even the ideas that we are writing. When we say conclusion, that means we are trying to end it, trying to finalize everything, okay? The next element or the next signal device that we can use are repetitions. When we say repetitions, of course, from the word itself, repeat, that means it's happening over and over again or doing it over and over again. So repetitions in terms of signal devices or repetitions as signal devices could simply be a word, it could be a phrase, or it could be a full sentence. Sometimes, or more often than not, especially if the writer wants to be poetic in nature, it could be a poetical line, okay, or creative in nature, then it could be a poetical line. Now, these words, phrases, sentences, or poetical lines are repeated because they want, or the author, the writer, wants to emphasize the significance of this particular word, phrase, or sentence in terms or in relation to the entire text. Okay, so there's an emphasis on the importance. You're trying to you repeated it because you want to tell your readers that you have to remember this because it's very important in relation to the text itself. Okay, or the idea of the text itself. Okay, now repetitions of main ideas particularly keep continuity and highlight important ideas. And when we say continuity, since you are repeating it over and over again, okay, you know that all of those ideas are, or you are trying to, rather, you are trying to assure your readers that all of those ideas are connected to one another. Okay, so there. Here are some examples of repetitions in a text. Okay, so let's go to the next signal device, which are synonyms. Okay, synonyms are simply, as we all know, I know you're all familiar with this one, these are words that have the same meaning. They share the same meaning. Okay, so these words that are similar in meaning could be important words or phrases that we use because we don't want to practice too much repetition. Okay, so you might be confused with that, ma'am. You said that repetition could be used as a signal device. Okay, yes, it could be used as a signal device only for important words or phrases. However, sometimes when you use too much of something, when you try to repeat things over and over and over again, it could be very tedious. Okay, so what do we do to avoid full-on repetition? By full-on repetition, I mean that you use the same words, you use the same words, you use the same technique to express the importance of this particular idea, okay? Now, to avoid doing that, we utilize synonyms. We try to substitute certain words with synonyms so that when the readers go into that, even if the idea is repeated, the words are not. So it prevents tedious repetitions. Okay. Consider the following example and try to identify the synonyms that were used. Okay, the last signal device that we are going to look into are pronouns. So I guess similarly, just like synonyms, you are all familiar with pronouns. Basically, we define pronouns as words that we use to replace nouns, okay? And nouns are simply words that are names for certain things, objects, people, places, etc., etc. Okay, now pronouns are very essential, important in producing a well-written text because these are words that connect readers to original words. Okay? And especially if, again, we want to avoid tedious repetition, okay, we utilize synonyms and pronouns. Okay? Some of the most common pronouns that we use include the following. Okay, now let's go to language use. Language use simply refers to how appropriate is the word or vocabulary that we are using in relation to the text itself. Okay, did we use the correct term? Did we use the correct vocabulary to represent the ideas that we want to, or to relay the information that we want to relay? Okay, so meaning when we are writing text, the words that we use need to support the purpose that we have in mind. Okay? Because our main goal in writing a text or producing a text is making other people understand what we want them to understand. So if that's our main goal, then we have to ensure as writers, we have to make sure that the words that we are using could be easily understood by our readers. Okay? So basically, your language use refers to that one. Now, in terms of language, it could be informal. By informal, we mean using words that are direct and simple. And usually, informal language is used when it comes to writing for your own, okay, or even writing to your family, friends, and colleagues. So basically, this type of language is used when we want to talk to, or we want to relay information, relay ideas to people who we share an intimate relationship with or a close relationship with. Okay, so meaning the relationship that you have with those people who will be reading the text that you have produced are already established, okay, or is already established rather. Okay, so for academic texts, more often than not, we utilize the formal type of language. Okay, now formal type of language is an unbiased language because it really follows, it strictly adheres to the rules of language use. Okay, that's why formal language is what we use in writing academic texts, business texts, and even government and official texts. Let's see the differences among the many ways we use language. Moving on, let's go to language mechanics. Language mechanics are simply the correct and proper use of the technicalities of the language. Okay, so take for example elements such as the spelling, punctuation marks, and capitalization. These are just three of the basic things that we have to consider when we are writing our text. Okay, so these are the three things in relation to the mechanics of language that we have to look into. Now, in terms of spelling, you need to make sure that you are consistently using one standard with regards to the spelling of your words. So, what do we mean by consistently using one standard? Now, for spelling, take for example, with the terms of using or with regards to using the English language, there are different types of English language. It could be British language or British English, American English, or even us in here in the Philippines, we have our very own take on how English should be used. Okay, so in terms of spelling, you have to be consistent with that. Okay, take for example, in the British language, sometimes they add the letter U. For example, the word color in British language or in the British English, they have it's spelled as COLOUR. But in American English, it's simply spelled as COLOR. Okay? Now, if you use one type of English already, then just settle for that one. Okay? Be consistent with that particular standard. Okay, so let's move on to punctuation. When we say punctuation, this is simply the use of different symbols to represent the ideas that we have in the sentences, okay, or how we present the particular sentences that we are going to write. Okay, now when it in terms of writing a well-written text, punctuations are very important because we use them based on the impact and thought you want to emphasize in your text. So it's also representative of the how do I say this? It's also representative of the essence of the ideas itself. Okay. Now sometimes punctuations, the improper use rather of punctuations may lead to misinformation, or it may also lead to misunderstanding, which I will be showing to you in the next few slides. Okay, capitalization is also important. Capitalization simply refers to the use of lowercase and uppercase. So there are certain rules that we need to follow in terms of using capitalization. And also there are certain rules that we need to follow in terms of using punctuation as well. Okay, now as per capitalization, always consider the conventions in capitalizing words, such as proper nouns and titles. Okay, so proper nouns and titles, more often than not, or actually always begin with proper nouns and titles always begin with capital letters, okay, or uppercase letters. So these three are the basic things that we have to look into in terms of language mechanics. These are very important because it's a matter of representing the idea itself, the meaning behind the text, the meaning behind the word, the meaning behind the sentence, or even the entire paragraph. Okay, so as writers, as producers of text, then we have to be careful with our spelling, punctuation, and our capitalization. Here are some examples and pictures from the internet that best illustrate the importance of the proper use of language mechanics. That's all for today. Thank you so much.